He's Deirdre Kurtenbach. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz. The Warriors are in Minnesota tonight, but that Mavericks loss is still fresh in my mind. Dieter, I don't know if it's still fresh in yours. I think we need to talk about this a lot more. George is getting upset. George is getting very upset. You might be the voice of.
I don't know if I can fix it. I don't know if I can fix it.
I hope you can, man. You're going to be more the voice of reason than I today, but we'll have a great show, hopefully.
Oh, no.
This is Locked On Warriors. Here we go.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Dieter Kurtenbach on Twitter @Dieter. You can follow me on Twitter @DogSurfRoadshow. Dieter, you weren't here yesterday to break it down. I wish you were, man. I would love your insights. Dude, talk about that disaster that was the Mavericks game, please.
It was one quarter of disaster, right? Like that's
yes.
There's a larger existential question to be broached. Like, would you rather be the Lakers who just got their teeth kicked in for 4 straight quarters, or would you rather be the Warriors who looked really good and admittedly, never put the Mavericks away? And I think that maybe it's one of these things that in retrospect you look at it and it's like, oh, the signs were all there that we should have seen this coming. But no. They had a 19-point fourth quarter lead with less than 10 minutes to play. So, shut up. They were not supposed to lose that game. That's the worst fourth quarter loss in the NBA this season. It's the first time the Warriors have lost a game in which they've won or led by 20 or more points since 2007 in the regular season. 2007, they did blow a 31-point lead to the Los Angeles Clippers in the playoffs a couple of years ago. And honestly, I'm glad that the Warriors were able to, remind us about that game, because I think that it lends itself to a larger conversation as it pertains to the Dubs. They didn't make a basket for 8.5 minutes, full stop. Jordan Poole had a bad game. Otto Porter had a bad game. Steph Curry wasn't great in the fourth quarter. Horrible. They needed Andrew Wiggins to step up with no Klay Thompson, no Draymond Green, and Andrew Wiggins decided to step back instead with an 18-foot, 17 dribble, step back jumper time and time again. He's been really bad without Klay. He's been not good in the month of February. He has not looked like an all-star. He has not looked like himself from early in the season where he was aggressive and seemed to be in control of sort of Minnesota Wigs, as I like to call them, early on in the season. But that 31-point loss to the Clippers in the 2019 playoffs, when the Warriors were just out there messing around at Staples Center, it was a very vivid
first
game.
round. I remember that.
Remember everything about it. It's something that would have been cited regardless, but it juxtaposed to that loss to Dallas, I think it's a good reminder. The Warriors had a chance on Sunday to make up a full game on the day on the Phoenix Suns. And I'm someone who's ardent that they should be gunning for the 1 seed. And the Golden State Warriors, to a man, are ardent that they are not going to do that. They are now 1 game up on I keep doing this. I keep on messing up my M's on the Mississippi River.
It's easy to. I get it.
On the Memphis Grizzlies. They're 1 game up on the Memphis Grizzlies. I can understand the validity of the argument of not going for the 1. Don't push yourself too hard. Stay healthy for the playoffs. Steph, Klay, and Dre in a postseason setting. You're always going to bet on them. Doesn't matter where Game 7 is. I can understand the argument for going to 3. If you're playing the same teams more or less, what's the big deal if you're in Memphis for Game 7 or if you're at Chase Center for Game 7? I get it. But the fact that they're not going for seeding, the fact that I feel like they are inevitably going to fall to 3, given the way that Memphis is playing, given the way that they're playing. And with Klay not being in tonight, and who knows what happens tonight, but they got a hellacious March. We've talked about that for weeks now.
Yeah.
I feel like they're going to the 3 seed. It would kind of stun me at this point if they didn't.
I'm with you.
And at the 3 seed, you're now playing a Dallas or a Denver in round 1, as opposed to playing a play-in tournament team. You're now getting a Memphis in round 2. You're then, if you're lucky, getting to Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals. You are putting yourself on a more treacherous path. And 2019, the Warriors didn't win the title because of some really bad luck. There's no question about that. Bad injury luck. But that bad injury luck can't necessarily be divested from the fact that they messed around and they dicked around come playoff time.
Yes, they
And they
did.
played more games than they had to. And they put more wear and tear on guys who were at the time in the peaks of their powers, put more wear and tear on those guys. And Durant goes down twice and Clay goes down in game 6 of the NBA Finals. And is it a direct correlation? No. Is it loose at best? Probably. But they played too many games leading up to the games that really mattered, and they didn't have enough juice in the tank to get over the top. It feels like they're heading into that same problem again. And my issue is this is a much different team, and I think not as good of a team that the Warriors have from 2019, because I don't
Not
know,
even
going
close.
from
Not even
Kevin Durant
close.
to Andrew Wiggins is a little
Yeah.
different. They don't have a second unit that they trust, or at least that Steve Kerr trusts. They haven't gotten into a state of cohesion yet with Klay Thompson. It's been very mixed match, in large part because Draymond's not there, if not for almost exclusive reasons because Draymond's not there. But this is not the 2019 team. This is not the dynastic operation. And the 3 core players, which now everyone season seems to just be riding on their magical powers, which I firmly believe in. Those guys are not at their peaks anymore. They are on the back 9 of their careers, and they might be on hole 11 or 12, but that's not. They're still not playing hole number 6 or 7. And I think messing around gets you got, especially come playoff time, especially when I look at Dallas, who is a brand new team without Kristaps Porzingis. It's funny how they get rid of, in my opinion, or at least he's my least favorite player in the NBA. They get rid of him. They start playing better. It's wild how that happens.
Shocker. Yes.
And Dinwiddie was a really nice pickup. He's been a really good player for a long time. He just got caught in the morass of nonsense.
So agreed. I'm with you on that 100%.
Then you look at Denver. Jamal Murray possibly coming back. And I'm not a big Jamal Murray guy, but like Jamal Murray's better than Bones Highland. And, Michael Porter Jr., who I don't know if he helps all that much, but wings come playoff time. I'm looking at a Warriors team that will have a wing of Andrew Wiggins, who has just simply not been himself and is giving me a lot of indications that he's a not ready for primetime player again. And Klay Thompson, who says he's at 80%, has statistically not been all that awesome. We keep doing the obvious extrapolations with Klay, as well we should, because it's early in his tenure back and all this stuff, and we just say, oh, it's been, there have been nights where it's looked really good, and there'll be more and more and more of those. What if they're not? What if there isn't? And listen, I don't want to be a fearmonger here, but it feels as if the Dallas game is a pivot point for this team this season, on the basis of, if they keep struggling the way that they've been struggling, losers of 5 of 7, we're going to look at that Dallas game in a couple of weeks and say all the signs were there. This is a team that can't get it done in the clutch. This is a team that doesn't have a secondary scorer, or doesn't have. They're going to look at that game even without Klay, even without Dre, and we're going to say all the signs were there. And if this team starts to get its act together and play the way that they can, even without Draymond, and hopefully then afterwards with Draymond taking it to a whole other level, then we'll just say, hey, they got their teeth kicked in. It was a bad loss. They learned the lessons necessary. It was a major part of them locking in and playing like a championship team again. But Cyrus, I got to tell you right now, I don't think that the floor is all that high for this team. I keep dropping down the floor.
I agree.
When I keep looking at this team, I go, their level of just baseline competence just keeps dripping down. And everyone goes, well, Draymond's going to come back. No one thinks higher of Draymond Green on this planet than me, including Draymond Green, and perhaps even including his mother.
And I'm with you on that, by the way. Yeah, you can count me in on that group.
Draymond's got to take him up to here, right? He's got to take him up, right? Is this floor and the championship level that Draymond's trying to get him to, is that gappable by just adding Draymond Green? Cyrus, if they don't start showing me something, I don't think so.
I have a million things I'm going to ask when we come back from this break. I have so many questions, and this is where the emotion in me, in terms of being a fan, is can be blinding. I hope not.
It's an emotional.
It is for Dub Nation, and I want to add, by the way, it's not just it's the last 2 home games that are really concerning, because that Nuggets game, you could echo a lot of similar sentiments there. And when we come back, we're going to delve into a lot, because there's a lot to talk about. But first, I mean, look, there might be some solace in betting on sports, Dub Nation. If you're grumpy, if you're not happy like me right now, football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Dieter, do you have the lines, by the way? I feel like you're reading my mind. Maybe you're not. I don't know.
I haven't checked it. I wish I was.
Okay.
That would have made a lot more sense.
It's okay. It's okay. When we come back, we'll
how
give
about this, Cyrus? You guess it. Guess it real fast.
Oh, I love that. Guess the lines. I'm going to guess. So this is Warriors, T-Wolves. As crazy as it sounds, I think Minnesota -1.
Ooh, that's a bold statement. That's a bold statement.
Is it this calling them calling the Warriors underdogs? I just feel like the we're betting on how people are feeling. That's always the bottom line with the lines. It's not necessarily the logic of who the better team is. It's how people are feeling. That's why the Nets are still incredibly a title favorite, despite the fact they're falling to the play-in.
Well, you had the number right. You had the team wrong.
Warriors -1.
Warriors -1. Over under the total in this game 232.5.
I'm not touching it again. Those bookies
I
are
wouldn't
just
touch it.
We'll be back with more.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. He's Dieter Kurtenbach. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz. First things first, man, and I got a lot of heat for this because I just did the numbers wrong. I watched that entire Warriors game, and I incredibly did not realize Stephen Curry played over 10 minutes in that fourth quarter.
Right.
But it was largely just he was inefficient, he was ineffective, but it raises a bigger picture. Until this season, Steph always had a very consistent rotation. 12 minutes first and third quarter, finish out the second half of the second and fourth. If you needed him in big games, you bring him in a little earlier in the fourth quarter. I understand Kerr made rotation changes because he wanted more of Steph in the fourth. I don't see the results. What are your thoughts on Steph's current rotation, and should we revert back to the norm?
Well, I think that it's very difficult to revert back to the norm on the basis of what is this second unit? Who is this second unit? Who can you trust on the second unit? We talked a lot on this show about Goran Dragic, and I don't think that we quite put two and two together on the Goran Dragic thing, because why would the Warriors want Goran Dragic? They want Goran Dragic to anchor a second unit, to be a corner three-point shooter in a spot. It's just a statement, not even towards Goran Dragic. It was a statement against Jordan Poole. And they don't know what they're doing with Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole oftentimes doesn't know what he's doing. And
that's true too.
and he's 22 years old. And again, we're doing this thing where I love it. I love the fact that this exists out there in the world. But Warriors fans have this nasty habit of just continuing to extrapolate good things. This just relentless optimism towards everything always getting better. And I don't know how you couldn't be conditioned to think that way if you follow this team now, because it was relentless pessimism for decades. And then it just stopped being that way and almost automatically reversed. So there is this thing of, well, Jordan Poole, complete bust up until about this point last season, right?
Correct.
Goes down to the G League. I didn't even think played all that well in the G League. I watched damn near every one of those G League games. There were moments where you're like, Jordan, are you doing?
Agree.
And,
yeah, I'm with you.
Which you get at the NBA level too. But he comes back and he's a godsend. He's fantastic. In many ways, he saves the Warriors season last year because they go to a small 7-man rotation. James Wiseman is out. Kelly Oubre is out. Additions by subtraction. They're not having to figure out how to integrate those two guys, one of which is too young to understand and one of which is too bullheaded to understand. Regardless, they start playing much better basketball. They figure out their style. They figure out a bit of a verve. They run out of gas eventually, but they get into the playoffs, or at least the play-in tournament. And, you know, something good came of that season, and in large part because of Jordan Poole. He comes out this season pretty good. You like what you see from Jordan Poole. He looks like he's taking another step. He's dropping 30 every now and again. You're thinking, hey, this guy's there. Warriors are thinking, hey, we need to give this guy a big number. You know, you get Connor Letourneau coming out here reporting 4 years, $80 million. I haven't heard anyone else say it, but you know how I feel about Connor. So 4 years, 80 it is. And it just looks ridiculous because he's hit a ceiling or the environment around him is such to where it's not conducive for continued growth. He was terrible. He was terrible against Dallas. He's not doing those
Horrible.
little
About
things
as
that we
bad as
saw.
you can get. About as
Yeah.
bad as you can get, my friend. 0 for 11 from the field. Continue on. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's just is what it is. And
yes.
he's not even doing those little things where, you know, I've commented a couple of times now that like I've really actually enjoyed watching him have to pull it back a little bit. I've liked seeing him take on that secondary point guard role, be a little bit more controlled in his play, be a little bit slower in his play. Though I'm always pushing for fast, but just somebody who seems to have an understanding where guys are on the court as opposed to just running as hard as he can to the other end, driving to the basket, passing the ball. He's a decent passer, if not a plus passer.
Agreed.
He needs to be the second unit guy. Steve Kerr cannot, and I think that he has validity in this argument, cannot get over the mental hurdle when it comes to Jordan Poole being the dude who controls the Warriors' fate for 12 minutes a game. And if you go back to the old rotation of beginning of the second, beginning of the fourth, Steph is off the floor, you're putting yourself in a situation where Jordan Poole has to have a good game every night because there's just not enough dudes around him. And
Right.
I don't know how you stagger Wiggins and Clay and all that, but they have not gotten to a place where Jordan Poole is the clear-cut backup point guard, even though there's no other alternative, I suppose, other than Andre Iguodala. And even that, I don't know if you can trust. And
if he plays, I mean, we never see him play anymore. So I mean, that's a whole. But so let me ask you this: Do you think where's the impetus when it comes to the responsibility of the coaches in all this? Because you talk about Jordan Poole, he only played 19 minutes. Sometimes players need 30 to really find their groove for a whole game. Jonathan Kuminga, who in the month of February was playing like a Rookie of the Year candidate, only plays 17 minutes.
Well, he's
I don't. I mean,
too. I mean, this is,
and he wasn't great, but do you have, but some players still have to give them a chance and give them those 25, 30 minutes. And I'm just wondering if that could be part of the problem too, or if the players themselves are. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill there. Like they were not having good games. It's one game. They had been getting those minutes. So you're arguing where's the coach? Where's the agency there? In fact, it would seem as if you're making the argument that there shouldn't be any agency, that the rotations are the rotations no matter what's happening in the game. And if you were watching that game,
I'm thinking maybe it should be. I guess that's what I just don't know.
That's an argument to be had. That's an argument to be had. I don't know if we'll ever come to a right answer on that, but
yeah,
Kerr's agency in that situation was these two guys are having a bad game, and they're young, and I don't want to have them and their confidence, young players' confidence, man, that's some pretty fragile stuff, even with a guy like Jordan Poole, even with a guy like Jonathan Kuminga. I don't want to put them in situations where failure is going to have larger repercussions than I sucked today. It's one thing to just suck one day, right? And just be like, okay, well, I'll get them back next time. It's a whole other thing to say, I sucked today and we lost because of that. And
yeah, I feel you on that.
You can get to that point. If you're like a Dieter Kurtenbach, you can get to that point real easy. But that's not typically the mindset of a great athlete who's made it this far. Now, if you're going to, there will always be somebody who has to take on that burden. That's why the superstars get paid so much money. I sucked today and we lost because of that. It's my fault that the team lost. That's why you pay a guy $30-40 million, because it's also the same when they win, and they'll never take the credit for the wins, the great superstars, but they will take the credit for the losses. That's not on Jordan Poole, who's 22 years old. That's not on Jonathan Kuminga, who is a baby child. That's not on Otto Porter, who also didn't have a good game, and the Warriors really could have sure used one, but he's on a minimum contract. Like, that's not his responsibility, which is why I come back to Wiggins. Did I think that Wiggins was terrible? Was he like god awful in the game? No, he had a great first quarter, but he's getting paid big money and he's an all-star, man. He's got to come through. He's got to come through in that
and those
spot.
those clanks and those ISO situations at the end were just torture. I mean, when Wiggins misses, you know he misses, and
Right.
he was missing those shots. There was no touch on those shots. It's a disaster. When we come back, there's a free agent out there, Dieter. I'd love for us to talk about. He's not a big name. He's not going to be a difference maker, but it's someone that maybe could help. Maybe doesn't matter. We'll talk about that and so much more. First, let's bring up a great sponsor of this program, Rock Auto, folks. This is how you save money. With the increasing numbers of makes and models of cars, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? An example being a Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 from a chain store, just $216 from Rock Auto. They're a family business. They're serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years now. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. He's Dieter Kurtenbach. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz. There's actually a center out there who is at least a name. I don't know how much value he still has. I don't know how much he can still produce, but that's DeAndre Jordan. He's reportedly being let go by the Los Angeles Lakers. I personally, first of all, I want to commend you for bringing up the emotional aspect and the psychological aspect of coaching and young athletes. That's very important. It's often lost in the discussion of sports. And I actually, and that's a huge reason why I continually respect Kerr and this organization. I feel like they are very well aware of that. With that said, there's a player on the roster named Nemanja Bjelica, and I might have mispronounced the first name. I apologize for that.
Trust me, as someone named Dieter Kurtenbach, I can understand mispronouncing the name. It's Nemanja. It's Nemanja.
Nemanja Bjelica, and he has not been producing lately. This has been going on months. I want to let's even take a step back from this. I want to add one thing real quick. The Warriors when on Christmas Day when they beat the Suns were 27-6. They're 16-12 since. And for those that think Draymond is the cure-all, the answer-all, they lost 3 of 5 before Draymond got hurt. So it's not like they were like thriving before Draymond got injured. And in all honesty, with the back injury, this is where it's killing me inside to see the Warriors and outside, because I tweeted a lot. It's killing me that the Warriors are just continually brutalized and pummeled inside. And I just don't think Bjelica is the answer. I do think DeAndre Jordan would be a slight upgrade. What are your thoughts on that? And any other changes that you might foresee, if any?
Well, I don't think it's going to happen. The
I
Nets
agree.
sound like they have the inside. I'm sorry, the Sixers sound like they have the inside track. They need to replace Andre Drummond. Replacing is a very strong word used there. It's not going to happen. The Warriors have made it clear they're going to stick with what they have for reasons quite the opposite of the Lakers, right? The Lakers are like, okay, you made your bed, LeBron. Now you got to lay in it. And the Warriors are like, we don't have much recourse, so we got to stick with this thing. They're going to ride the James Wiseman train straight to hell, better for worse. And it sounds rather imminent. He's going to get a game down in Santa Cruz here in the next week or so and get on back. So much from our.
So this is breaking news, I believe. So this is what your
Bob
sources
Meyer
are telling
said
you?
this on 95.7 this morning. I'm 95%
beautiful.
sure, but.
Well, for those of us that don't listen to terrestrial radio that much, no offense, Dieter. I'm never in my car.
No, trust me, I see the numbers. I understand. And
but I just don't drive, man. I worked in the business for decades.
I get it.
But I did not hear that. So that's
so Bob's saying he's trying to get him down into Santa Cruz. They were vague about it. That was always the expectation, right? We
Shocker.
talked to Kevin Dana. It was get him. We were going to get him a game in Santa Cruz. So that's happening when. Who is to say?
Yes.
And listen, I don't think it will help them on this road trip where you get Minnesota and Cat. So that should be interesting tonight. But Dallas, we saw, doesn't have a center, really. They're not going to play Boban. And the Lakers, you don't have to worry about in general. You would hope that maybe you can get James Wiseman in there for Monday's game, or at least Tuesday's game, Monday's game against the Denver Nuggets, and then Tuesday's game against the Clippers with Zubac. Maybe that's a better matchup. Maybe it isn't. Who's to say? But I don't. Let me just make this very clear. The Warriors roster isn't changing. Could it change? Maybe. Should it change? Probably. But it isn't. It's not going to change. And
I'm with you.
I'm with you that there are guys on this team that look eminently expendable at the moment, but the operative syllables there are spendable, and Warriors are not going to pay $5-6 million for a dude who they deem redundant based on the way they built this team.
Yep, I'm with you, man. And again, they play tonight. The Timberwolves. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about that and so much more. Dub Nation. Look, man. If you're hurting inside, I'm with you, man. And Dieter, thank you for.
If they win tonight, no one's going to remember squat. If they go out and play like they did the first 36 minutes against Dallas, it's happy times are here again. It's a regular season game in February. It's only prescient if things get worse. That's my stance.
I love it. George is not as upset. Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow. Connor Letourneau is going to join us on Thursday, so that'll be kind of cool as well. We'll do a little trifecta show. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA, the Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Dieter at Dieter on Twitter. You can follow me at DogSurf Roadshow, and Locked On Dubs is the handle for this show. Thank you, folks, and Dieter, I'll see you tomorrow, brother.
Yes, sir.